Hi everyone, it's Pam. Last week we talked about properly storing your family archives in closets and keeping them in places that have more stable temperature and relative humidity and getting them out of the attics and basements. This week we're going to talk about photos and documents and how to properly store these specific items and maybe even some photo albums as well. So letters and documents, this could be anything from marriage certificates to death certificates, any type of important family document that you may have, or fantastic letters that people used to write to each other. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to unfold them if possible. Now granted, some of these steps we're going to go through, this is a lot of work. If you don't have time to do all this work, the best thing, once again, is to get them out of the attics and basements and keep them in a stable temperature area, and that will help preserve your documents more so than some of this. This is just extra and making sure that some of the stuff some of the metal or rubber bands don't transfer onto the documents. And I know this can be a little tedious, but this will help long term. And if you only have time to do certain documents, pick the most important ones that you want to save and preserve. Maybe something that's very important, tells your family's story. So we're going to unfold these letters and documents if possible, but be careful. We're going to remove staples, rubber bands, and paper clips. And the best thing to do is place them in acid-free folders or envelopes. It gets them out of sitting on a cardboard box or a plastic tub, both of which you want to have some kind of acid-free protection. Anytime you're working with archival materials, you want to keep things in acid-free folders or envelopes. If there are things that you want to keep together, and you want to try and keep things in the original order as much as possible, because the items were placed in that order for a reason, and we want to make sure that reason is preserved. We might not know what that reason is, but we want to keep them in an original order. Now, if we need to keep them in original order, and you want to keep certain things grouped together, you can use plastic paper clips, the ones without the metal, because the metal will rust onto that. Or you could use strings to tie these items together. You can also scan or make copies of important information. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later on. And you want to do this especially if items are in poor condition. Okay, this is maybe pretty common, kind of items thrown in a box, all mixed in together, that may be lying around your house or an ancestor's house or someone in your family's house. With photographs, we want to separate the negatives and the prints. And if you have any old film, you want to separate that as well. We don't want them to deteriorate onto one another, so we want to separate the negatives and prints. We're going to put the envelopes together. We want to put the photographs in envelopes together and the negatives in envelopes together. They deteriorate. The negatives have more acid and will deteriorate much more quickly, so we want to make sure they're preserved together. You could also use plastic sleeves if they're photographs you want to view. Once again, we're going to talk about viewing and looking at these photographs a little bit later on in the series when we talk about scanning. But I think envelopes are probably your best bet and most cost effective. You can put a few photos together. And then with the photos you have on display at your house, take them out of the frame, scan it if you can, and put the reproduction up. That natural light is going to deteriorate those photos extremely quickly, so we want to be able to preserve them the best we can. Photo albums and scrapbooks. I know we all have these around. Scrapbooks can be an absolute nightmare. I don't know if any of you have scrapbooks that might be on black paper that's faded, or there's things glued or things falling apart. There's a lot going on with scrapbooks. There could be multiple types of items on one page. Photos, ticket stubs, letters, all on one page, which all have different preservation needs. Things could be taped or glued or falling apart. The most important thing is to don't rip this all apart without preserving that original order. Original order is very important because this scrapbook is a reflection on how someone wanted their story told or an event story told. We do not want to rip it apart and lose that original order. If we need to, we can take a photograph of that scrapbook or scan the pages to preserve that original order. We don't want to just be ripping through scrapbooks. In addition to scanning and photocopying that, we could scan and photocopy those pages of the scrapbook to show people, and especially if the photographs and items in the scrapbook are super fragile, we can show a reproduction to other people to try and preserve that as long as possible. We could wrap the photo album or scrapbook in acid-free tissue paper and tie it together with some twine. That would be good, and place it in acid-free boxes. So, when handling photographs or anything, we want to be sure to wear gloves. Gloves are a little hard to find at the moment, but we don't want the oils of our fingers to get onto these items. We would like to get acid-free materials, and there's a number of companies, including Hollinger Metal Edge and Gaylord Archival Supplies, that are the two that I recommend. Some of the supplies are expensive, but they do go a long way, especially if you get envelopes. And maybe start with your high priority items and go from there. One thing to be careful of is looking at archival safe materials. We want acid-free materials. These pass certain tests in the archival fields and are most safe to store our photos and documents in. And we're going to talk about pencils in an upcoming series about labeling these items, but you want to get some pencils as well. And storage space, stable temperature, and relative humidity. We do not want to have any food or any drink anywhere near these items. If you've ever gone into an archives or a research room, you may have been told no food or drink anywhere near them. You do not want the chance of these items to be damaged by food or drink in any way. We don't want a crumb to get on the item, and then an animal could be attracted to it. So clear a completely safe space and before handling any of your family archives. Next week, we're going to talk about dating and labeling those photos and how to date and label some photos if you have no idea who the people are in the picture or when it was taken. We're going to talk about context clues and how that can be helpful in creating your entire family history and just getting more information for your family story. Thank you.